Long before craft beer became a trend and microbreweries lined every downtown street, Canada's brewing tradition was built by a handful of pioneering families who turned grain, water, and yeast into liquid gold. These weren't just businesses, they were community landmarks, sources of local pride, and gathering points for generations. From the cobblestone streets of Old Montreal to the maritime docks of Halifax, these breweries survived wars, prohibition, economic shifts, and corporate consolidations. Today, a select few still stand, carrying names that echo through hockey arenas, summer cottages, and backyard barbecues. This is the story of Canada's 10 oldest breweries that refuse to fade away. When John Molson fired up his first brew kettle in Montreal back in 1786, he couldn't have known he was launching North America's oldest continuously operating brewery. That's over 2 centuries of bubbles, barley, and bottles bearing the Molson name. For generations of Canadians, Molson wasn't just a beer, it was the beer. The one your dad kept stacked in rectangles of 24 in the basement fridge, the one that appeared at every family barbecue, and the one that fueled countless hockey nights. Molson Canadian, with its proud red M logo and the tagline, "My beer has been universally well-liked," became a national symbol, a liquid handshake that said you belonged. The packaging itself, clean, bold, unapologetically Canadian, felt timeless, like it had always been there and always would be. You'd crack one open on a summer evening, hear the hiss of carbonation, and taste something that connected you to your grandfather's generation and his grandfather's too. Molson wasn't fancy or pretentious, it was honest, reliable, and deeply woven into the fabric of Canadian life. It showed up at weddings, fishing trips, garage parties, and Sunday dinners. It was there when the Leafs won and when they lost. It was the beer you poured for the boys, the one that linked strangers at the rink and turned neighbors into friends. Even as craft breweries exploded and tastes evolved, Molson remained a touchstone, a reminder of simpler times when beer was about community, not complexity. The brewery's longevity is a testament not just to business savvy, but to its place in the collective Canadian memory, a brand that grew up alongside the country itself. In 1867, the same year Canada became a nation, the Oland family founded what would become Moosehead Breweries in St. John, New Brunswick. It's the largest fully Canadian-owned major brewer left standing, a point of pride for anyone who cares about keeping traditions alive. For Maritimers especially, Moosehead isn't just a brand, it's a piece of home. That green can with the silhouette of a moose became as recognizable as the Confederation Bridge or the Bay of Fundy Tides. Moosehead Lager and Moosehead Pale Ale weren't exotic or experimental. They were steady, trusted, the kind of beer you'd find in every corner store from Fredericton to Cape Breton. The green bottles evoked long summer evenings on cottage docks, the smell of salt air mixing with the cool bite of a freshly opened beer. You'd sit with your feet dangling over the water, watching the sun set over the Atlantic, and that bottle in your hand felt like it belonged there. Moosehead carried the weight of Atlantic Canada, the resilience, the independence, the refusal to be swallowed up by bigger, shinier competitors. While other breweries sold out to international conglomerates, Moosehead stayed in the family, stayed Canadian, and stayed true to its roots. That loyalty resonated. It wasn't just about the taste, it was about what the beer represented. It was a symbol of regional pride, a middle finger to corporate takeovers, and a reminder that some things are worth holding on to. For many Canadians, ordering a Moosehead was a small act of patriotism, a way of saying that homegrown still mattered in a world racing toward globalization. John Kinder Labatt started brewing in London, Ontario in 1847, and by the time the 20th century rolled around, Labatt had become a household name from coast to coast. But it was Labatt Blue, often just called Blue, that cemented the brewery's place in Canadian hearts. That iconic blue label with the simple, bold lettering became a visual shorthand for good times. College students crammed it into dorm fridges, CFL tailgaters stacked it in coolers, and picnic goers hauled it to the beach in mesh bags. The twist-off cap made it easy, the taste made it reliable, and the price made it accessible. Blue wasn't trying to be fancy, it was the beer you grabbed when you wanted to relax, not impress. It showed up at backyard parties where someone's uncle manned the grill, at basement rec rooms where friends gathered to watch the game, and at summer cottages where the only agenda was doing nothing at all. Labatt poured money into sports sponsorships, plastering its name across hockey rinks and football stadiums, embedding itself into the Canadian sports experience. Watching the Argos or the Stampeders with a blue in hand wasn't just a habit, it was a ritual. The beer became inseparable from the moments it accompanied. The roar of a crowd after a goal, the groan when your team blew a lead, the laughter that followed a terrible joke. Even as craft beer snobs turned up their noses, Labatt Blue endured, a blue-collar champion that refused to apologize for being what it was, a straightforward, no-nonsense beer that got the job done and brought people together. Alexander Keith opened his doors in Halifax in 1820, making his brewery one of the oldest working operations in North America. For nearly 2 centuries, Keith's India Pale Ale has been a maritime institution, a beer that tastes like the East Coast itself, bold, briny, and unapologetically local. Walk into any bar in Nova Scotia, and you'd hear someone order a Keith's with the same casual confidence as asking for a weather update. The brewery building on Lower Water Street became a landmark, a piece of living history with its old bricks, hand-mashed traditions, and tours that let you step back in time. You could almost hear the echoes of sailors and dock workers who drank there 100 years ago, swapping stories over pints that tasted like the ones you were holding now. Keith's wasn't just a beer, it was a cultural artifact, a thread connecting past and present. Summer evenings in Halifax meant Keith's on a patio, the salty breeze rolling in from the harbor, the sun dipping low over the water. It meant dock parties, kitchen parties, and late-night kitchen table conversations that stretched until dawn. For older Canadians, Keith's evoked a sense of place and belonging, a reminder that some things don't need to change to stay relevant. The beer carried the weight of East Coast pride, the resilience of a region that weathered economic storms and never lost its identity. Ordering a Keith's wasn't just about the drink, it was about honoring a legacy, supporting a local institution, and keeping a piece of Halifax alive in every sip. Thomas Carling started brewing in London, Upper Canada, back in 1840, long before Canada was even a country. The story goes that he began with nothing but a wheelbarrow, a dream, and a few barrels of beer, selling his brew door to door to thirsty settlers. That humble beginning grew into one of Canada's most recognizable beer brands. Carling Black Label and Carling Lager became staples on Canadian shelves for decades. Their red and black cans a fixture in basement fridges, corner stores, and backyard coolers. Older Canadians still remember the tagline, "Hey Mabel, Black Label," a cheeky, unforgettable slogan that turned a beer into a cultural catchphrase. Carling wasn't trying to be sophisticated or artisanal, it was the beer of the working man, the union guy coming home after a long shift, the family hosting a Saturday barbecue where the grill never stopped and the beer never ran out. The packaging was straightforward, the price was right, and the taste was dependable. It didn't wow you, but it didn't disappoint either. It was the beer you bought by the case, the one that fueled weekend projects, fishing trips, and garage jam sessions. Carling embodied mid-20th century Canadian life, unpretentious, hardworking, and community-focused. It was the beer your grandfather drank, and maybe your father too, creating a generational link that went beyond flavor. Even as tastes shifted and craft beers took over, Carling held a place in the collective memory as a brand that helped build Canada, one wheelbarrow load at a time. The Oland family's brewing legacy began in 1867 with the Army and Navy Brewery in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, the same year Canada became a nation. Over time, the operation evolved into Oland and Son, becoming a cornerstone of maritime drinking culture. Oland Export Ale and Schooner became fixtures in taverns, fishing ports, and kitchen tables across the East Coast. For older Maritimers, Oland wasn't just a beer, it was a symbol of home, province pride, local employment, and community tradition. The brewery's Dartmouth and Halifax locations tied it directly to the heartbeat of Nova Scotia, where fishing boats unloaded their catch and workers clocked out for a cold one at the end of the day. The old Oland branding, with its classic labels and maritime imagery, evoked a simpler time when beer was brewed locally and enjoyed locally, before national and international brands swallowed up regional favorites. Oland carried the weight of Atlantic Canada's working-class identity, the fishermen, the dock workers, the mill hands who built the region's economy with their bare hands. Ordering an Oland was a statement of loyalty, a way of saying you supported your own, that you remembered where you came from. Taverns across the Maritimes poured it by the pint, and locals knew the taste by heart. Even as the brewery changed hands and brands consolidated, the Oland name remained a touchstone for those who remembered when beer was more than a product. It was a piece of your community's soul. The Sleeman brewing tradition stretches back to the 1830s and 1850s under John H. Sleeman in Ontario, though the modern company was reborn in the 1980s after decades of silence. That revival brought back a name many Ontarians remembered fondly, a brewery that felt like it belonged to the people, not the boardroom. Sleeman Cream Ale and other classic flavors offered something a little different. Smoother, slightly more refined, served in clear bottles that let you see exactly what you were drinking. It wasn't trying to compete with the mass-market giants on volume alone. It carved out its own identity as the Ontario craft-leaning larger brewer before craft became a buzzword. The old Silver Creek factory in Guelph became a symbol of continuity, a place where tradition met quality, where brewing was still treated like a craft, not just a commodity. For many Canadians, Sleeman represented local beer done right, a bridge between the old-school big breweries and the new wave of microbreweries that would explode in the decades to come. It had the heritage, the family story, the connection to Ontario's brewing roots, but it also had a modern sensibility that appealed to younger drinkers looking for something beyond the usual suspects. You'd order a Sleeman at a pub and feel like you were supporting something authentic, something that cared about taste and tradition in equal measure. The bottles showed up at dinner parties, cottage weekends, and backyard gatherings, earning a reputation as the thinking person's beer without being pretentious about it. Sleeman proved that heritage and innovation didn't have to be enemies. They could coexist, creating a beer that honored the past while looking forward. David Kuntz founded his brewery in Waterloo, Ontario in 1844, tapping into the region's natural spring water to create a beer that locals swore by. The brewery wasn't just a business, it was a community landmark, complete with a park and a spring fountain that became gathering spots for families and friends. For Waterloo region residents, Kuntz was hometown pride in a bottle, a beer brewed right where they lived, using water from the same springs their grandparents had drunk from. The old Kuntz label and packaging from the days before major consolidation swallowed up regional breweries evoke a time when beer was hyperlocal, when you knew the people brewing it and could visit the plant on a Saturday afternoon. Locals remember taking their kids to the park, filling bottles from the spring fountain, and feeling a tangible connection to the brewery that employed their neighbors and sponsored their Little League teams. Kuntz represented community identity and regional pride, a symbol of what made Waterloo distinct in a province full of cities trying to find their voice. The beer itself was unpretentious, clean, refreshing, exactly what you'd expect from a brewery built on pure spring water. It didn't need to shout about being special, it just was. When the big brands came calling and Kuntz eventually got absorbed into larger operations, something was lost. A piece of local identity, a thread that tied generations together. But for those who remember, Kuntz is still there in memory, a reminder of a time when your beer came from your hometown, brewed by people you knew. Founded in 1865 in Ottawa, Brewery's Union Brewery became one of the capital's oldest and most beloved brewing operations. For generations of Ottawa residents, Brewery's meant more than just beer. It meant local, working-class tradition poured into every glass. This was the beer that fueled lumber camp bars, filled mugs at community halls, and flowed freely in the taverns where mill workers, government clerks, and tradesmen gathered after long days. The imagery alone tells the story. Barrels loaded onto carts and rolled down to the Ottawa River, the old brewery building standing solid against the changing cityscape, and the clientele, honest, hardworking folks who wanted a cold beer and good company. Brewery's wasn't fancy or aspirational, it was the people's beer, the one that showed up at union halls, church basements hosting fundraisers, and the corner tavern where everyone knew your name. Older locals still talk about Brewery's on tap at their first part-time job, slinging pints behind a worn wooden bar, learning to pull a perfect pour while listening to the stories of regulars who'd been drinking there for decades. It was a rite of passage, a connection to a lost local beer culture that existed before national brands steamrolled regional favorites into obscurity. Bradings represented a time when your beer came from down the street, when the brewery owner lived in your neighborhood, and when drinking local wasn't a marketing trend. It was just how things were. The brewery may be gone, but the memory lingers in the stories of those who lived it. A ghost of Ottawa's industrial past still tasted in nostalgia. These 10 breweries didn't just survive, they endured, carrying forward stories of pioneering families, local pride, and community connection. From Molson's centuries-old legacy to Brading's working-class roots, each one brewed more than beer. They brewed identity, memory, and tradition. They remind us that before beer became a lifestyle brand, it was simply life itself.